Okay. And Connie, if you want, we can maybe wait a minute or two just to see if
Sure.
others join.
Yeah.
So hold tight, everybody, and we'll start in a minute.
Yeah.
And I guess we can go ahead and get started, Connie, and then I'll let others in as they come.
Okay. Well, first of all, welcome those of you who are here. We're excited to see you here and that to know that you've got interest in our new grant process. We're excited to be transitioning over to the Community Foundation using their portal. I think hopefully everyone will find it a little more user-friendly than what we've done in the past. I do want to thank in particular Doug Wickham, who was wonderful in helping us through COVID and converting this thing, online. And we've kind of built on what he did, and Jessica and her staff have done an excellent job, I think, putting this on. So hopefully you guys will find this useful and will enjoy doing the process. And of course, we wish everyone good luck. You want to start off with the slide? Jessica's going to control my slides here, so I'll just give you a brief introduction. Okay, so as I said, welcome to our new grant cycle, which actually kicked off back on May 31st and will continue through July 21st at 5 p.m. At that point, I believe Jessica's staff will cut off any new applications, so you do want to make sure you have it in by that date. Go ahead, Jessica. All right, so first question is always who can apply? And that has changed a little bit this year. As always, teachers. We've always accepted teacher applications, in particular for projects. We've always welcomed administrators. That includes building administrators, as well as our central office staff, directors. They're all welcome to apply. Our PTAs and PTOs are invited to apply as well. And we've actually granted several grants to them in the past. And we have even had 2 students apply, and both were granted funds as well for very worthwhile projects. One thing to note about students is they will have to have an adult to sign on as the manager of the grant. And Jessica will go over that a little bit more as part of setting up their account, how you can do that so that they do have an adult there to supervise the grant and be responsible for it. We have accepted grants from support organizations. Perfect example is Head Start. Community Services is another one that operates in our schools. So they are absolutely welcome to apply. And we have received grants from support personnel, including a special ed aide, an SRO, and a school nurse. So, any support personnel with MCPS are also welcome to apply. Next. All right, just discuss a little bit about our mission so you can understand what types of projects we're looking for this year. I won't read this to you, but I just wanted to point out the information in bold red, which really explains the purpose of the grant process, which is, as I said, to discover, advance, and enhance educational opportunities. These are things generally that opportunities that students would not have, and even educators would not have within the scope of normal funding. Go ahead, Jessica. And you might notice in particular some of the words in bold here, because we tie this directly to the MCPS motto of engage, empower, and encourage. And our goal is to engage the community. We want to make sure the community is who is supporting public education. We want to empower our educators to be able to do things that they might not be able to do with traditional funding, and use that to encourage innovation and creativity in their projects, and to create these exceptional educational experiences for our students. Go ahead. All right, so what we fund, and we get this question a lot, and our goals are pretty much what define the two areas we are funding now. Number one, as we said, provide opportunities beyond the scope of available public resources. What this means, though, is we're not replacing funds that have been lost. We still want to support projects that would not have been funded even if we had, a huge pot. Things that that would just simply never be approved as part of the regular curriculum, but intended to enhance the curriculum. So you want to essentially go above and beyond what the curriculum allows, obviously within all of the rules and regulations and everything of MCPS, but we do want to make things available that would not be available to our students. And we want those things to be creative and innovative and something, not that we've done before. We love things that prototype or are the first try of things. Those kinds of projects we especially support. And one thing we want to make sure people understand, and we did send this out to our educators, but we may have some folks on here who did not receive this email. Part of our grant process for the last probably 5 years has been to fund professional development requests. Now we are going to do that in a different process now. So going forward, professional development requests will be done on a rolling basis. We will rate them as we get them. And that will also, I think, help speed things up for those types of requests, because often they have a much shorter turnaround. So we're not accepting professional development requests through this process. And then another area that we frequently get requests for that I want to point out that we do not fund is things like snacks and food. That has frequently come in as a request. It just simply doesn't fall into our scope of things that are creative and innovative. So there have been projects we've received where part of the request included snacks, such as an after-school program, where we would fund the program, but not the snacks. So we would fund the materials or a speaker, things like that, but not the snacks. So those are two areas you do want to avoid when you're thinking about your projects. But otherwise, make it something interesting, creative. Make sure it applies well to the SOLs or whatever standards you generally are using when you're designing your curriculum and materials and things that you're going to use with your students. But most importantly, we really like things that are new, creative, innovative, and unique, and bring experiences to our students that they've never had before.
Connie, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I actually had this come up just recently. What about stipends for folks who are executing the project?
We do not typically fund those types of funds. That is something that, again, would be expected to be funded by MCPS. And therefore, if it is something that you would expect MCPS to fund, then we generally would not fund it. Good question. Any other questions before we move on? Okay.
So I think, Jonathan, you were going to talk a little bit about support for teachers and applying before I walk folks through the application.
Sure. So some of you on the call I know that I've worked with before in the past. I'm available as a resource. Basically, I can help any way throughout the process that you would like, from kind of clarifying your idea, making sure that you've talked it through with your principal. That's one of the biggest ones that we have to kind of make sure that your supervisor needs to be on board with what your plan is. But then any aspects in terms of crafting your application or whatever support you need throughout the process, all you need to do is you can reach me by email, and we can set up a quick call or a Zoom to chat. And then often what I do is work with people electronically, and we'll just collaborate through Google Docs on the various pieces of your application. But usually, I'll have anywhere from 10 to 15 people typically in a grant cycle that'll reach out, and then other folks that I don't hear from. And so I'm not always sure that everybody knows that I'm available. So I just want to make sure that we put that part out there, that whatever aspects of the application process you need help with, just let me know.
And we usually like to put one little caveat in here because Jonathan is on the MCEF Board of Directors. However, using his services will neither help nor hurt your application, because he does recuse himself from all voting on this process. So don't think that, if I go to Jonathan, he's on the board, that might help, or if you don't go to Jonathan, it might hurt. It doesn't. Okay, so just want to make that clear.
Great. Well, thanks, Jonathan and Connie. So I'm Jessica Wergo. I'm with the Community Foundation of the New River Valley, and I am just going to walk everyone here through where you can find resources and an overview of the MCEF grant program, and then what the application process looks like, including setting up an account in our online system. So I did want to just reiterate again a little bit the timeline that we'll see. So let me first share my screen and kind of introduce you here to some of the materials we have. Can you all see that okay? Yep, okay. So you will be able to read about MCEF grants through the Community Foundation's website. And our website overall is cfnrv.org. And any information about grants, including the Montgomery County Educational Foundation, is all on our website. So we have a page specifically dedicated here, and it talks a little bit just about what Connie and Jonathan already shared, but I wanted to just highlight a few things. These requests are, as they have been in the past, for up to $1,000. They do require that you submit a final report, as they have in the past. And in particular, we ask you to take a look at the terms and conditions that are linked on this page. They talk about what we expect in the final report. That final report will also be submitted through the Community Foundation system. But this just gives you a sense of what you should be prepared to provide at the end of your project, so that you can be considered for future grants. And then it's also got plenty of contact information here for you. So Jonathan will be your main contact to think through your project, what might fit MCEF's focus. If you have questions about the online application system itself, you can contact the Community Foundation. And then we also have the general information here for the Educational Foundation for you to access as well. The next thing you'll see is the important dates. So as Connie said, the online application is already open and available to you. And I'll show you just in just a minute what you're going to see in the system. The deadline is July 21st at 5 p.m. and the system does shut off entirely at 5 p.m. So if you have not officially submitted your application, and we'll talk about that, then you are out of luck. Unfortunately, we can't bring you in after that. So please make sure that you start the application ahead of time. The system we have allows you to start it and come back to it until you finally press submit. So you'll be able to save your work. And then in future years, you'll be able to go back and see what you've applied for in the past, et cetera. And then I'll talk a little bit later about the review process and how that works at the Community Foundation. But the main thing to know is that the funds will actually be issued via checks, typically in September or October. So when you're thinking about the kind of project that you want, if it's something where you need the money in advance of that timeline, it could be that we might, you might do a project in the fall semester. You're not going to get the check to cover that until September or October. So please just keep that in mind, that that's just the way that our process works, and that check will come from the Community Foundation as it has many times in the past. And then at the bottom of this page for you are resources. And I wanted to just walk through each of these briefly. So again, there are these terms and conditions. Please read through that in advance, because one of the questions in the application is whether or not you've read the terms and conditions, so that you know what you're agreeing to for final reports. Then the other thing that would be really helpful is this online technical support guide. We'll look at that in just a sec, but this is going to walk you through how to create an account in our system. And it has specific information in there for you for MCEF, so that you will know how to create your login information and the basic information for your account. So that is there and helpful to you. Then there are also PDFs of the application, so you can see in advance what that asks for, as well as the scoring rubric that is going to be used by our reviewers. So you get a sense of what we are going to be looking for in the process. So again, all of this is available on the Community Foundation's website under grants. That's there for you. And then you'll be able to access the online grant portal. So let me just show you a couple different things as we take a look at the information here. So first of all, I just wanted to show again, and can you all let me know, nod if it has flipped over to the grant applicant tutorial? Okay, good. So again, just to reiterate, this is a step-by-step guide to how you create your account within our online application system. And you'll see that there are areas that are bolded specifically for MCEF. So if you forget everything I'm going to walk you through in a minute, this is where you come to make sure that you know what you need to set up your account before you start the application. So please walk through that. And then again, if there are questions that you have, you will be able to email the Community Foundation or call us as well. So when you first click on that open of the grant portal, you are going to be brought to our grant application system. And what you're going to do is create a new account. So I'm not going to walk through this entirely, because you can find that in your online grants tutorial, but I did want to fill out kind of the first section so you can see two places that are going to be specific to you all. So I'm just going to put a few things in here right now as a placeholder. One of the things that our system asks for is a EIN or tax ID number, which you have no reason to be familiar with, likely, as a public school. But within our tutorial guide, we tell you what the number is for MCPS. And I'm going to write it in here too, so you can see it. So this is the same number. It is in the guide for you to enter. And this is the one for anything that's affiliated with Montgomery County Public Schools. If you are a support organization of some sort, or like a Head Start or the community services, you all are part of nonprofit organizations and will likely have, well, you should have this EIN number. You may well have it memorized, like so many of us in the nonprofit sector, to put that number in. And then it's going to ask, yeah, go ahead.
Interject. And for our PTAs and PTOs, some of them are not, they are separate nonprofits. So they would have EIN numbers. If they're still PTAs, part of the national organization, then the national organization has an EIN.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Connie. That's really helpful. So please make sure that you're putting in the appropriate EIN. If you have a question about that, you can let us know. But in particular, for folks who are teachers or students, please use this one for Montgomery County Public Schools. Everything that's asterisked is what you'll be required to enter. So go ahead and do that. Your we'll need the physical address of your school, because when we do send checks, they are sent physically to your school. I'm just going to put something in here quick, just so you can see what it looks like. And once you've completed the section and hit next, it's going to take you through to the next sections about asking for your name specifically. So this is going to be whoever is completing the application. It will allow you to copy basic information, to put all your contact information in here. Sorry, y'all. Just making sure I fill out everything that is required in here. Please make sure that you are entering an email address that you are checking regularly, because you will get updates from us if the application is about to close. You will also get an email when your application is officially submitted. And then should you be funded, when we require the final report, you are also going to get an email. So everything runs through the system to the email that you put here. So make sure it's one that you check regularly so you can get all of those things. The last section that I wanted to point out that can be different depending on the applicant to MCEF is what's called the executive officer. So in this situation, our system allows for a couple different contacts related to an application. In your case, if you are a teacher or whomever is going to just be running the program, hit no, and then you're just going to move on to the next thing, and you don't have to complete anything else. If you are a student, then you will need to put in information about the teacher that is sponsoring the program. If you have any issues with this, it is all in the online tutorial, but give us a call at the foundation. We can help you make sure that you have that correct, just so we know who the main contacts are. The rest of the section is pretty self-explanatory. You'll set up a password, and you will get an email after you've set up your account confirming that your account is set up and you can log in. Let me pause for just a second and ask if there are any questions about creating an account in our system. Okay. All right. So once you log into our system, you will be brought to your home page. That is just your organization. Hold on. And then you're gonna go to apply, and that will allow you to apply for different grants. Hold on, let me log in. Sorry, y'all. I was logged in before as someone else because I'm an administrator, so I see something different than you do. Give me just a second. Okay. So what you will see when you log in and hit apply are two options for you. What you want to do is look at this Montgomery County Educational Foundation grant application. This repeats the same information that you've heard before and is on our website, and you would do that and hit apply. And you'll notice when you start to apply that whatever you have entered in, obviously this is a different organization, but your contact information is going to be automatically put into your application. So once you have set up your account, anything you do, both this year and going forward, is going to auto-populate that contact information. So the main thing now is to go into your grant application. We'll just walk through this very briefly. Again, we ask that you read the terms and conditions so you know what you are being asked for in the final report. The terms and conditions includes things like not only the kind of narrative you have to have, but if you have photographs, what file size they need to be, and making sure you have the proper permissions if you're showing children in those photos. All of that is in the terms and conditions. We ask you to indicate whether you are a previous applicant to MCEF. So even though this application system has moved to the foundation, if you received an MCEF grant before, this is where you want to make sure you put, yes, I have. And remember that in the past, you've also had to complete those final reports. So if for some reason you're not up to date on those, make sure you contact MCEF. But hopefully you have those in so that you can move forward if you've gotten a grant before. You'll indicate here whether you've applied, whether you've received one or not at all. Then you'll include the name of the project, the amount that you've requested, which should link to the budget we'll show you later. You'll be asked to indicate your home school, and this is a drop-down menu that will show all of the schools as well as the juvenile detention center, for example, central office. For our PTAs and PTOs, there is an other category, and you can put that within the project name. We also ask for your principal or the director of your site and their email address. This is just a text box to put that in, but that helps us to be able to check in and make sure that they are all comfortable with you moving forward with the project. Any other schools that might benefit. We also ask if your project has technology needs, and if so, if you need the support from the ITRT person and their email address. So just make sure again that you've put that information in there. You'll be asked for a start and end date, and then you'll move into kind of the narrative portion. And this will be similar from what folks have seen in the past for the Montgomery County Educational Foundation. But there are some areas that have either been removed or modified a little bit just to streamline the application. So you'll write a summary of your project, and in each one of these areas, you'll see that there is a character limit. So two things there. They're pretty generous limits, but these are character limits, not word limits. So make sure, say if you're doing this in Google Docs or if you're doing this in Word, when you look at word count, you will also be able to see how many characters you've used. Spaces count as characters. And so just make sure that you are being concise in this section. You'll get an error message if you're going over, but try to be concise in these areas to keep it to that character limit in each place. You'll ask for your goals and objectives. And again, like Connie said, these should be specifically linked to either the Virginia SOLs or to another standard that might be specific to your organization or project. Make sure those are clearly defined because we are going to be looking in the scoring rubric at whether or not you've made clear that what are your specific standards that you're going by and how your project is going to meet those. We ask about need and originality. And you'll see in this particular question that there's a chance to talk about either if it's a new project or if you're adding a component to an existing project that really takes that project to the next level. So again, like Connie said, this is about being innovative and expanding beyond what is typically offered in the classroom. Then you'll be asked to talk about the impact and benefits to students and others. So maybe if there's a benefit to the broader community, to your colleagues, please put that there. A question about mission and how it aligns with the mission of MCEF and MCPS. You'll be asked to talk about the sustainability of the project. So is this something that's a one-time use? Is it something that can continue beyond this project? And also to talk a little bit about whether it's something that's going to require maybe some more resources going forward, or once the initial investment is made by MCEF, it can be continued going forward. Those are all those questions are narratives with character counts. So you're just going to be typing directly into the box, writing your application information there. Then there's a couple areas that you can upload files. So in the case of a budget, we want to make sure that you are clear about the specific expenses for your project. You can include a narrative as part of that, so explaining in a bit more detail than maybe a typical, sort of table format budget would show, exactly what the money is going to be spent for. We're also asking you to indicate are there other funding sources that are supplementing the project? So maybe you've got some grant money from something else, and this MCEF money will be able to pull it all together. And please make sure in the narrative you'll see as well that can the project be funded in stages or in part? That's useful to reviewers to know as we're allocating money, whether we can fund a grant partially if we don't have enough money, or whether funding it partially wouldn't allow you to do the work. All of this is an uploadable file. So you will hit upload and be able to upload directly from your computer. And these should be PDF files that you are uploading, because that makes it easiest for us and the reviewers to read. Please do not upload a super long Excel document. You can, or something that is going to be difficult to read. So make sure that you after you've uploaded it, you will be able to see the file link there, open it so you can see what the reviewers are seeing, because we've had times in the past when folks upload stuff, and even though it seems like you uploaded the file successfully, it's too small for anyone to read, or it's a format that we're having trouble with. So just make sure it's readable. And then you also have an area where you can put some additional materials, additional considerations, or maybe brochures or past information that would be useful, that you can upload it here. And each one of these has a file size limit. So please, nothing huge, but 5 megs it should be more than substantial for what you're going to upload. So this is the full application. You can at any time save your application, and the materials, whatever you have entered in thus far, will save in the system. Anytime you log back in, you'll be able to start again where you left off. You can revise as needed as many times as you want to. When you feel good that you have all of the materials together, you have completed the narrative, that is when you are going to submit the application entirely. And once you submit it, you cannot go back into the system and mess with it again. So please make sure that it's in good shape before you submit it. I'd make a couple other suggestions as you're working on the application. Please try not to submit it right before the deadline on July 21st, because we have a lot of applications coming in at that time. But what our staff at the Community Foundation does, if we are seeing grant applications come in once they're submitted, we will take a look at them and particularly test like all the uploads and make sure that the application is complete. So if you have put it in several days in advance and we at the foundation catch something and say like, whoa, your budget, we can't read it on our end, we will contact you and say, hey, we need some help here. And we can reset your application to a draft status and work with you to make sure that the material is readable and everything is submitted on time. But if you're submitting this 10 minutes before the deadline, we're not going to have any time to look at that. So we would highly recommend that you try to get it done in advance. It's a pretty straightforward application, and you get that kind of extra support from our staff to make sure it looks okay. The other thing I would say is, even if you think everything looks great, if you want a little bit of extra assurance, you will get an email that your application has been submitted, but you can also call our office at any time. And any one of us at the office can go into the system and check that your application has been successfully submitted on time, and we can take a quick look through it while we're on the phone to make sure it's okay. So do not hesitate to call the Community Foundation's office if you have questions about the grant application, or just want to make sure that everything went through okay and you are done with the process. So let me pause there. I think there was a quick question in the chat.
Yeah, and if you wouldn't mind, Jessica, just kind of going back up to the top, because I've kind of thought some things,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah,
make.
sure.
Again, on the terms and conditions, as Jessica said, this is not like, Apple terms and conditions where it's pages, pages, pages. It's a short list, but it is very important that you read it, because this has been the biggest factor for people not being able to apply a second time for grants because they didn't meet these qualifications. So please make sure you do that. And same thing, surprisingly, there are people who don't realize they have actually applied before or even received grants and will actually answer that question incorrectly. And again, as Jessica said, if you do this ahead of time, we have a chance to catch that. And but if you do it at the last minute, then we don't. And so you don't want a simple thing like that to get you kicked out. Again, the requests may not exceed $1,000. The project budget may exceed 1,000, but we will only fund up to 1,000 of it. So, don't feel like your project budget has to fit that. But if it doesn't, make sure you've indicated how else you're going to fund that. I think the question that it applies coming down here is, if you currently have if you don't have a principal, and you're on a principal search, then the next person absolutely would be an assistant principal. If for whatever reason you don't have an AP as well, then at that point, I think I would contact your director of either secondary or elementary, see how they feel about it, or someone else who is, responsible for your site, to sign on as the person, in lieu of the principal. In terms of benefit to others, or what other schools. So make sure you list any other schools, because we frequently get applications from folks who work in separate schools or who are collaborating with teachers in other schools to do a project. Make sure you list those, because that means you've broadened your impact and is going to improve the scoring of your application, because it means you're going to impact a lot more students and colleagues. As far as the ITRT question goes, it's surprising how many people will say, no, I don't need technology. And you find out, yes, you do. So make sure whatever you're purchasing, if it requires any sort of interaction with technology or your ITRT, that you have that name and email listed in there. Again, that your detailed summary may be used for publication. One of the things we say in the terms and conditions is that we can at times ask you to submit perhaps like a trifold or something written for us, but oftentimes we may just take your narrative and use it in some sort of PR material. So please make sure it looks nice, and keep in mind that's going to boost your application as well. As far as the goals and objectives, most of them we get do apply to the SOLs, but we do receive ones that have other standards. Perhaps you have a national organization as well that has standards, things like that. So, and also, for example, in the area of special education, there are often other considerations that you have to meet that could fit into this. So just make sure you have some sort of applicable standard in there. In terms of need and originality, I think we've been over that. Again, we're looking for stuff very unique and engaging. When you talk about impact, keep in mind that projects that can be used now and down the road, that you should talk about that. Well, maybe right now this project is impacting, the third grade of our school, but because these resources can be used year after year, mention that this could benefit every third grade class for the next 5 years. So that's going to increase your benefit and your impact to students. As I mentioned before about the mission alignment, we have tied this to the MCPS, engage, encourage, and empower educators. And so, think about how well you align with each of those, because the more you can pull that in, the better your application is going to score. Sustainability is one that people have really misunderstood in the past, and I think it's easiest to explain with examples. Obviously, one of the most sustainable projects is when you buy something physical that can be used over and over and over. Early on, for example, some of the first things we funded were iPads. This was long before students had Chromebooks and teachers had iPads. We actually prototyped some of the first iPads for teachers to use in classrooms. Well, an iPad is usually good for 3 to 5 years. That's an extremely sustainable piece of or device. That's kind of a no-brainer. At the opposite end, you may have a project that you're requesting materials that are entirely consumable and are only going to be used once, and that project can't be repeated. So that would not have a lot of sustainability. And then what kind of falls in between are two things: projects where part of it is consumable, but part of it is going to continue from year to year, and therefore it might not take a whole lot of resources in the future to use that again and again. And it's particularly helpful if you can say, and our school, my principal has signed off on this, and we'll make sure that whatever these consumable materials are, that the school will cover these in the future, for example. So, our year is the prototype, but going forward, the school is going to provide these things. And then the other sort of less tangible, but still very important impact is, are you bringing something to the students that maybe they'll only get to experience once, but is going to be something like a once in a lifetime experience? One example might be, if you were taking students to a Broadway show in New York. Now, probably you can't fund that for $1,000, but as an example, that is something that a lot of students will never again get to do in their lifetime. So think about how you describe your sustainability, and keep in mind that the more sustainable and the more the impact, that's definitely going to help you as well. And then, as we said, for budget, it's fine if your entire project budget is much more than $1,000. We just need to know what our $1,000 is going to be used for. And then if there is more, how you intend to fund the rest of it. And then, of course, any additional material you can provide that supports your grant, that's wonderful too.
Thanks, Connie. So let me just pause for another second and see if there are any other questions from folks about the application itself.
Okay, actually, I do have a quick question. Hi, Connie. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
So let's say a group of students is going to do this together. So they are the Science Olympiad team at Christiansburg High School. And I know one of them is actually on the call right now, which is awesome. If they are going to do this, is it just the one person, like the captain / co-captain, along with the teacher rep? Would that be the person that would go on that application?
Yes.
Yeah, I
And
think
then-
that's very appropriate. Yes.
Okay. So then my second question is, sorry, Jessica, could you scroll up just a little bit on the application process? Like the impact and benefits, because they are a new team, they formed last year, so they're newly formed, but they're in that process of recruiting, retaining some current students. That impact would go a little bit longer than just the 2 years that they've done this, right? So they're like recruiting throughout maybe a couple more years. Would that be something that we could put into that application?
Sure. For an example, it sounds like similar to what you've done is we have funded new like FIRST robotics teams where schools are forming new teams, and we've helped, for example, purchase some of their materials or maybe help send them to a competition, those types of things. So yes, you would expect that, maybe in the early years, you only have a certain number of students, but that's intended to grow. So you would make a point in there of saying that this current year, it would impact these students, but we plan to grow the team or whatever to this, and these resources would benefit those students as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both very much.
Great. Any other questions from folks on the call? Okay. So I did want to note just a couple other things as we sort of finish out here. So again, when you log into the system, you will see the first thing that comes up is the Montgomery County Educational Foundation's application we've been focused on. But you're also going to see in here, the Community Foundation simultaneously is accepting applications for operating support from area nonprofit organizations. So what I would say for those of you on the call, if you're a teacher or a student group doing a project specific to the school system, only apply to MCEF, ignore the operating support grant. It's not required or worth time or anything like filling both out in any way. But sometimes it might be the case, let's say that Head Start has a specific project for which they're looking for support from MCEF, but they also often apply to the Community Foundation for general operating support. In that case, they would complete both applications separately, because oftentimes what they are using the money for general operations exceeds what they would want specifically from MCEF. If for some reason you're wondering whether you fit in that kind of category, just call our office or send a quick email and we'll let you know whether it's worth looking at both of these opportunities. But I think the vast majority of folks that are on this call and that are looking at these materials are going to focus just on the MCEF application.
Another thing to point out too is, we do accept applications from students, but not for scholarships. And the Community Foundation has an entirely separate process for students applying for scholarships. And we would certainly encourage you to do that, to apply to those, but this is not where you do that.
Right. Yep, exactly. Thanks for that, Connie. So let me stop sharing and talk finally kind of through the process after you submit your application, and then we can finish up with any more questions. So because this is part of the Community Foundation's process, it falls underneath our whole grant review system. So the way that that's going to work is you will submit your application by July 21st. The first step in the process is the Community Foundation staff just go in and make sure that everything is completed, that your budget we can read, there's no issues with the application, or that somebody who is ineligible has gone ahead and submitted an application. Any of those will get removed pretty quickly from the process, typically within 1 or 2 weeks as we review them. The next step in the process is that we have a committee that reviews all of our applications, whether through MCEF or those operating support grants. Typically, there are about 20 people who serve on the committee. They don't all read all the applications, but instead we split them into teams with a different focus area. So some of our members will read all the arts related applications from arts organizations. In your guys' case, all the applications to MCEF will be read by one team. And I suspect that at least one of the folks from MCEF's board will sit on that to actually score all of our applications. You will be able to find, again, on our foundation's page, the scoring rubric. So you could see exactly what our scorers are going in and doing. And they do all of that process online, typically in August. So after each individual on the team goes in and scores the application, they have a chance to write comments as well, all within the system. And then each one of our teams meets, typically by Zoom, although some meet in person. And what they do is discuss each application and then put them into one of three categories. One is, this is a fantastic application. We really hope it's funded. A 2 is, yeah, this is a good application. It's definitely fundable. It just might not be at the top of our list. And a 3 is, wow, this is not something we would want to fund at all. That does not mean that that like a 2 can't get funded, for example. It's just a way, as we start to allocate money at the foundation, that we can prioritize and set these in groups. So the score that you receive is kind of like the first metric that helps us all understand what everybody thought. But as you might imagine, people score very differently. So this prioritization process and discussion helps us to just say, okay, where's everybody coming from? What, are we all clear on what the application is saying, and really helping to prioritize those. And then after that process is when we start to assign money. And in that case, the MCEF board members will also work with the foundation to specifically indicate which ones of your applications they want to fund. That they do that with our staff. And then once that gets all approved by our board, which is typically a pretty fast process, that's when we are cutting checks and letting you know that you are receiving a grant. So all of that happens typically in the September to October timeframe. Because this is all through MCEF, I think it's going to be pretty quick to do that process, but just know, as you can already tell, it's a multi-layered process. So give us the time to do that. The other thing I'll say is while your application is being reviewed by our committee, you are not going to see it in our application system. So sometimes people get really nervous because they're like, hey, I just went in to check my application after the deadline, and oh my gosh, it's not in there. Perfectly all right. Don't worry. It is still there. It's been submitted, but while it's being reviewed, it is not visible to you until a decision is made. Again, you can always call our office if you have a question about that. Anytime if you have a question about the process, you can let us know and contact me, and we can tell you kind of where we are in the scoring process. But typically you will hear something from us in September to October, and then we'll be cutting those checks and getting those out to you. Any other questions on the scoring process, the application, what kinds of projects MCEF is looking for?
Hi, my name is Arya Patel. So I am the captain of Christiansburg Science Olympia team, and we are looking to apply for funding this year. So my question is more in regards to the fact that, if we do end up applying for around $1,000 in grant money, and we don't exactly receive the full amount, are we able to still receive a partial amount?
Yes, I think I was looking for, Connie may have had an issue and jumped off. Jonathan, you want to?
Yeah,
chime in?
so in general, what that's part of what you're writing in your budget. If your budget is clear and we can see what parts, how the money was going to be used, occasionally, I believe that if there are multiple applications that fall into that next tier of scoring, that sometimes people might receive partial funding. But again, I think to make that easy on the scorers, you need to have a clearly defined budget so that somebody could see that, well, we can't do that part, but we can do that part.
Gotcha.
And I want to
Thank you so
intersect. Go ahead. My internet just dropped. I apologize, but I am back in now. I don't know if you saw me drop off there, but that's what happens up here on the mountain. When I left, Jessica was talking a little bit about the scoring process. And for those, I don't think there's anyone on here right now, but for those who might see the recording in particular that were past recipients, you're probably familiar with, our old rubric, and that has changed because we're now using the community foundation process. But in terms of selecting the grants, our process was very similar to what they did. Instead of 1, 2, 3, we had green, yellow, red, but it was essentially, we would put applications in 3 groups of absolutely fund these, we would like to fund these, and then ones that, either didn't fit the scope or just were not things we would fund. And then you fund all those that you can, and the rest of them is where we would have to decide, if we didn't have enough to fund those in that middle group, which ones got funded and which ones did not. So that part is still somewhat similar to how it was done before on our teams, the way Jessica does it on their teams.
Yeah, thanks, Connie. Any other questions from the group? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you again for kind of your interest in completing the application. We're excited to see what everybody puts in. And again, just remember, Jonathan is there for you talking through projects. MCEF and Connie can help you think through things that will fit particularly what they're looking for. And then anything related to the online system or concerns you may have, making sure everything submitted properly, you can contact the Community Foundation, and all of that is available on our website of who to talk to and information that's needed there. So please use that and don't hesitate to reach out. Connie or Jonathan, anything else you want to add?
Well, I would add this, if the money isn't enough incentive, all of our recipients get to come to a ceremony at the end. And in the past, it was usually done in December because that's when we handed out our checks. We have not been able to do that now for several years, thanks to COVID. So we're going to have a really big party this year, and we will want everyone to come. And another opportunity you have at that party is we also invite the people who sponsored your grant, because of course, all of these grants come from donations from our community members. And that is, you know, part of our mission and our goals in engaging the community is to get them to support public schools. And so you actually get the opportunity to meet the person that funded your grant. And it's usually a lot of fun, and it's just a really nice way to recognize those of you who have gone to this extraordinary effort to support your students. And we want you to know how much we appreciate you. And that's how we show you.
Great. Well, thanks everybody again for being here. And as you have questions throughout the process, let us know and just make sure you apply by 5 p.m. on July 21st. Thanks,
Good luck.
everybody.
Looking forward to reading them.
I've got another quick question.
Sure.
This is Encore Patel, Arya Patel's father. I was wondering, when it comes to the sponsorships, is there an opportunity to feature them on social media, say Instagram or whatnot, when the organizations have like such a feature like an Instagram post or a blog?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we have Twitter and Facebook. And I'm pretty sure, Jessica, you guys often
put
your as well. Ours are also on our website. All of our grant sponsors are on our website. All of our past projects are on our website. In the email I sent out, I sent a link to where you can go see every single project, every single school or organization that it went to. And that also helps you get a good idea of what types of things that we have funded in the past. So yes, you can find that on the MCEF website as well, which is in the information that Jessica, and you can always ask us, email or call us. Just so you know, our phone goes to a messaging system. And so you will be asked to record your a voice message, and then that is sent to us. So since we aren't physically located within the school board office, that's how we get our messages.
Great. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Take care.